It is spring 551 AD, and at Serdica, the ancient Thracian capital that was birthplace to the emperors Aurelian and Galerius, and now serves as the seat of the diocese of Dacia, an army that has been expressly formed with the intention of matching its ancient forebears in size and ambition, is awaiting orders to march. Its leader is Germanis, cousin of the Emperor Justinian and his likely heir. Such was Germanis's reputation when he planted his standard at Serdica, that from his small original complement of Roman soldiers, men from across the empire and indeed the barbarian tribes have rushed to join in his expedition. His objective is Italy, his ancestral homeland, and the mother of all cities that is now sadly reduced to a decayed husk after countless sieges and untold violence. With Germanis at the Roman army's head, however, Italy will come once more under the auspices of the Caesars, and Germanis will rule from the west as the junior emperors did in the time of antiquity. In Constantinople itself and the great cities of the Roman East, the plague that has assailed its citizens from all rungs of society for almost a decade is at last in abatement, and there is a renewed sense of vitality and purity in the crisp air over the lofty arches, vaults and columns that reach for the very heavens themselves. Further to that, Justinian has been able to commit resources once more to the reclamation of the lost western provinces, following the winding down of the war with the Sasanians, a de facto truce in the southern border regions, meaning that fighting on that front is now confined to the small area of Lazica on the Black Sea coast. Better still, word filters from Italy that former Byzantine garrisons and allies stand ready to commit themselves to Germanis's cause, and he makes it known that he will distribute all back pay on arrival, as he did in his campaigns in Africa. All is set for Rome and the Romans to fulfill their holy destiny, and final preparations are in place for the dramatic departure when Germanis falls ill and dies just 2 days before his scheduled commencement of campaign. Suddenly, from the height of confidence, all is thrown yet again into confusion and disarray. The empire is again on a precipice. At the time of Germanis's death, the Byzantine hold on Italy, once almost entirely complete after the initial campaigns of Belisarius, is now a precarious and fragile thing. Once Belisarius was withdrawn east after his second Italian campaign, sometime between 448 and 449, the Ostrogothic king Totila swooped in and retook Rome, the city he once vowed to destroy, just as Carthage was laid waste by the legions. And then he began using captured Roman ships to attack Roman-held Sicily and carry out raids on the Dalmatian coast. At the same time, the Franks took the opportunity to seize control of almost all of northern Italy. While Totila uses the stick of naval raids and an audacious Ostrogoth invasion of Sicily, he also offers a proverbial carrot in the form of overtures to Justinian, asking permission to rule Italy in the emperor's name, just as Theodoric the Great did in the early decades of the century. Justinian is unmoved by such appeals, and Totila's attempts to present himself as a leader in the mold of the Caesars come to naught. The Ostrogoth has even the temerity to host games at the decayed shell of the Hippodrome, presiding over the races from the venerable imperial box like an ape that's been dressed in a toga, or so Justinian sees it. But Justinian, aging now himself, signals the determination of his antecedents when he sends a fleet to destroy Totila's ships off Ancona, late in 550, and then proceeds with the recapture of Sicily by the general Artabanus. But the death of Germanis is a body blow. Putting aside his grief and the loss of his legacy, Justinian must find a replacement for the prematurely departed prince. Belisarius, the original Roman reconqueror of the West, is still active. However, he has already spent years in Italy and had his conquests in Justinian's name reversed twice, so he is reluctant to spend yet more of his dwindling time retreading old ground in the hope of striking it lucky on the third attempt. Instead, Germanis's command is passed to Narses, the eunuch who had the valor and daring to walk into Constantinople's hippodrome 2 decades earlier and negotiate the defection of the previously rebellious Blues to Justinian's cause, and so end the near-revolutionary Nika riots. Now past 70 and certainly no threat to the emperor's throne, Narses is an unlikely military general, but he accepts the most sacred and hallowed command and sets out north towards Serdica. Although Justinian had not given Germanis a great host of men, he had provided him with an ample war chest. Now he provides Narses with both. The delay following Germanis's death has seen further success on the eastern front, and the general Bessus claims Lassician Petra between the Caucasus and Black Sea coast. So assured is Justinian following this success that he orders contingents from the Thracian and Illyrian field armies to combine with Germanis's existing host, as well as sending elite men from the Praesental Central Army. To add to this, 4,000 Herulian Federati serve Narses under their generals Philemut and Arut. 6,000 Lombards are contributed by their king Audoin, and there is even a complementary force of Persian cavalry, seemingly sent as a gesture of goodwill, from the Sasanian Shahanshah Khosrow I. Narses takes command in April 551, and by the start of the next year's campaigning season, he and his army of 25,000 eager and confident fighters begin their march to reclaim the birthplace of their civilization. Upon reaching the northernmost edges of the Italian peninsula, Narses draws intelligence from scouts and spies who make it clear that Totila is well aware of his approach, and the Ostrogoth has sent his own general Teius to block the main passes, highways. Teius's mission is to create ambushes and ready mobile units to harass and wither the advancing Roman machine as it winds its way toward the inevitable showdown with the barbarian king. Simultaneously, the Franks, who are still allied with Totila, indicate they will remain aloof from the fighting, but they will not give Narses permission to move through their territory. Fighting the two tribes at one time is inadvisable, so Narses draws upon the centuries-long legacy of Roman ingenuity that has been passed down to him from the time of the ancient Republic. He marches his army south along the coastal strip of the eastern Italian seaboard, shadowed by the now commanding Roman fleet. The victory at Ancona has brought with it vital control of the sea, and Narses has also heard that Totila's finest warriors were among those who were rammed and bludgeoned to the bottom of the Mediterranean in the battle. Morale amongst the Ostrogoths has similarly plunged as a result. The shoreward march allows Narses to both bypass Teia's traps as well as avoid the Franks. To the stupefaction of the observing Ostrogoth scouts, when his army come to the mouth of a river, the support vessels of the navy row into the estuaries and form improvised pontoon bridges, letting his men cross the water by moving from deck to deck. In this way, Teius waits for an army that never appears, and Totila grows increasingly irate at the seemingly inexplicable continued approach of the man he calls an ancient, gelded Greek. On June 6th, Narses enters Ravenna, and it becomes clear to Totila that battle with his entire force is an inevitability. While Narses marches on after a short rest in the East Roman Italian capital, the Ostrogoth army moves up the ancient Via Flaminia and arrives at Taginae. Narses meanwhile continues his coastal march, fighting a sharp engagement at Rimini with an Ostrogoth garrison that has destroyed the bridge in an attempt to forestall his advance, before turning abruptly west and making for Busta Gallorum. He establishes his camp there, while Totila also consolidates his confederation of troops and sends out further summonses for reinforcements. Narses understands that Totila is in something of a quandary, and that the onus is on him to act, and not the Romans. Even though the Roman leader sends messengers to the Ostrogoth with the offer of peaceful surrender and captivity, there is to be no settlement this time. Totila cannot continue to operate freely, and the Roman expedition is too expensive to allow for anything but a decisive result. Totila can theoretically withdraw, but his only haven would be the shattered remnant of Rome, where yet another siege would end in its inevitable capture and a further destruction of its hallowed environs. Totila's only hope is to destroy the Roman army in the field, and that way continue to rule the wasteland that he calls his empire. He sends word to Narses that he will fight him in 8 days' time, but the eunuch general does not allow his men to drop their guard. Knowing that the Ostrogoth will come to him, Narses chooses his ground, again drawing on the military wisdom passed down from Caesar through Frontinus and Vegetius. The site he picks is an Apennine river valley through which passes the Bono stream, where his center will be positioned on an extended rise of high ground, and a hill protects his left wing. The ground to the rear of this position is rocky and jagged, quite impassable for an army moving at speed, hoping to launch a surprise attack. Scouting the field, Narses finds a pathway around the hill on the left flank, which he fortifies with a sentry detachment and renders impassable. In his center, he deploys the Lombards, Herul and Gepid federates, likely numbering 10,000 men, a massive and intimidating force for the time. He orders these to dismount and form a phalanx that is expected to stand firm in the face of the heavy Ostrogoth cavalry charge. On the wings, Narses' General Valerian takes the right and commands a force of cavalry, arranged in a crescent formation, their armaments mixed between mounted archers and lancemen, and in front of them stand almost 4,000 foot archers. Narses commands an identical complement on the left. Totila's first move is to have a cavalry party attempt to storm and capture the Roman left hill by way of the side track, but 50 of Narses' guards form a shield wall and hold fast in the face of their repeated attacks. Their determination, coupled with the disadvantageous terrain, leads to the abandonment of the assault. The Gothic cavalry withdraws in the face of the spearmen. First blood goes to the Romans. When Totila and his own host draws in sight of the Roman line, they are arrayed in the same manner as Narses has chosen, with an infantry complement in the center and cavalry on the wings. It is an awesome spectacle. Even though the Romans outnumber the Goths, this is Totila, the man who captured Rome and promised to turn it into pasture land. He is the new Hannibal, the new Attila, a phantom ghoul come to life before their eyes. While the Roman army watches from the hill, this demonic apparition spurs his horse and rides into the open valley below their position, his wild and horrific eyes staring up at them unceasingly with a haunted gaze. Hardened veterans shudder. Younger recruits bless themselves to ward off what are surely the depraved, nightmarish spells he is casting on them. He rides forth and sits on horseback before them. Narses and his high command can only wonder what kind of nefarious and diabolical act he will commit, while they can only watch and wait. Totila's horse put its left hoof out. The Romans catch their breath, waiting. His horse draws its hoof in, and then puts the right hoof out. The Roman front line crease their eyes in concentration, disbelieving their own senses. They cannot believe what they are seeing. Totila's horse has begun to dance. Stupefied, the hardened cataphracts and Germanic federates look at one another in wonder and incredulity. Totila embarks a series of elaborate jumps and pirouettes, his horse nimbly following his commands to canter, saute, and plie, raising a discreet cloud of dust, while the Roman and Goth armies begin to murmur alike in admiration, before breaking into a round of applause when the warlord climaxes a quick chassé into a pas de bourrée. Soaking up the adulation like an old hand of the stage, Totila invites the Romans to send forth their champions to engage his Goths in single combat. Narses, through it all, remains unmoved. In truth, Totila's performance has been an attempt to play for time and await the arrival of 2,000 reinforcements that he knows to be on the way. When he is given word that they have arrived, he returns to his lines and ostentatiously withdraws his men out of their formations and off the field. Once they are away from the Roman position, he announces that they will take their lunch, and the Goths sit down to eat in the now hot summer sun. Again, Totila is playing games with his opponent, hoping that Narses will see the Gothic disengagement as a retreat and leave his position of advantage to chase after them in the valley. But it is not to be. Narses holds firm and waits, the patience of age steadying his men in the center and wings as they eat their own ration in one hand while holding spear and bow in the other. Totila reappears and draws up his formations and companies once more, this time with the cavalry forming a long line in front of the less numerous infantry. And suddenly, as the sun finally begins to recede in the sky, there is no more time for delay, no more sideshows, no more flamboyant displays of feasting or confidence. The eunuch Greek will not move. His men stare impassively and unfazed at the Goths. Totila has run out of road. The reckoning stands before him. On a ridge close by where they believe Roman armies fought invading Gauls during the earliest days of the Republic. No man can escape his fate, and so it is with Totila there in that scorching cauldron. The Goth raises his arm high, and a war cry erupts from the thousands of men all around him. They spur their horses forward, and the ground shakes with the thunderous impact, and the dust rises like incense at a funeral mass. They screech and holler, following Totila's order to use lance only and break the Roman lines, which he is sure are made up of reluctant mercenaries, and will flinch before facing the might of his Goths. For a full minute or more, the warriors bask in the glory and power of the charge, touching the almost divine elation of weightlessness and might. Narses and his generals watch them approach. Then he too makes a signal with his hand, which is passed on to the subordinates in the center and the right wing. Some of the Goths noticed the change on the flanks, the movement of the bows being brought out, the notching of the arrows. The majority are lost in the moment, their eyes straight ahead. When they thunder past the range markers put in place by Roman junior officers earlier that morning, the order is given to raise bows and fire. 8,000 lethally sharp bolts cut into the densely packed mass of human and horse flesh, and the front and second lines of the Gothic cavalry are shredded into ribbons. But on they come, their bravery and valor scorning the mortal danger in which they find themselves, and then the second volley comes, and the charge is hobbled. Those that do make it to the Roman line in the centre are sparse and injured, Narses' infantry throwing their own missiles to compound the misery, and the Gothic attempts to lunge and poke at the shield wall are half-hearted. They withdraw to try and regroup, but this only puts them in range for another lethal volley from the archers on the flank, and then another as they start to prevaricate and cower. The Romans have so far fired 32,000 arrows at the enemy in just 4 salvos, and their supplies are ample for many, many more. Despite Totila and his loyal commander's attempts to rally the men, the Goths want no more of the engagement, and they begin to depart and break for safety. Narses has waited his moment well, and now that his foe is reeling, he gives the order for his own cavalry to ride forth. This leads to complete alarm among the Goth companies, and their horsemen start to sprint away from the oncoming warriors. Any hope of mounting a stand disappears when the infantry panic in turn, and begin fleeing from the field when they see their elite in a stampede of distress. The Romans begin a general pursuit, and the result is a carnage of slaughter as they cut down their hopeless enemies. Totila himself is brought down by a Gepid, his retainers upbraiding the man for serving the Romans, and not his natural rulers, the Goths. In the wake of the disaster, Teius takes control of the remnant of the Ostrogothic army, but all are aware that the matter is now a foregone conclusion. Rome will once again be ruled by the emperors, but a destroyed and broken city, its population a mere fragment of its once awesome cohort, taken by a majority barbarian army led by a Greek eunuch. It is not a place that Augustus, Vespasian, Trajan, or Marcus would recognize. The world has changed, but for now, thanks to the actions of the most unlikely military hero, Narses, some kind of order becomes at least imaginable once more. If you like what you see, consider supporting my work on Patreon, and you get ad-free early access to my videos for as little as $1. You can also show your support by liking the video, commenting, and subscribing to my channel as a sacrifice to the algorithm. As always, I'll see you in the next one.